Sydney is our second volunteer, and she is a reapplicant who also has an in-person interview. So, and she happens to be in Georgia like me.
Hey.
Hi. How are you feeling?
I'm glad I went second.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna ask you the exact same questions. Just kidding. I'm gonna ask you all new questions. But it's not scary. And you said you interviewed last cycle.
Yes, ma'am. I had one in-person interview and one virtual interview, and I definitely like the in-person a lot better. It's definitely, like Christina said, it's hard to kind of get how they're feeling about you whenever you're talking through a computer screen. So,
Yeah, I feel that, and I mean it's great that schools are getting back to in person. I think they felt like virtual was easier, but then I do think a lot of applicants wanted in person, and were coming and trying to do visits anyway. So I don't know if that's part of it, but um, yeah, definitely makes it a little bit more fun too, when you get to go kind of see where you're potentially going to go to school and all of that. But we'll jump in. We'll do some more. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and then we'll talk about them afterwards. From last cycle, I asked Christina this, but is there anything specific that you want to work on or that you feel like you struggled with?
my patient care experience last cycle, I was still an undergrad, so my patient care experience wasn't as great as I felt like it could have been. But
Okay.
as soon as I graduated in December, I got a job working, 40 hours a week with patient care. So I definitely feel like that's boosted my confidence in dealing with patients. And I felt like that was the area that I lacked the most, especially like all the forums I'm seeing, like 30,000 hours here. And I'm like, oh, okay. I have nowhere near that. So I definitely feel like I'm more competitive as an applicant now.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think, just continuing to work on all the parts of your application. Your application is very well rounded, though. I think, like, I looked at it before. I know the people watching can't see that, but we'll get into all of that. And Small World, we were talking about before, but Sydney shadowed a PA that I went to school with. So we were talking about how the PA community is so small and you end up knowing a lot of people. And so that's a really cool part of, to me, being a PA, is whether I've like know someone who knows somebody or PAs I've met virtually that I meet in person. There is a lot of networking and getting to know people in the space, which is fun. Okay, let's jump in and get into a little intro. If you could just tell us about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, my name is Sydney, and I'm from a very small town in Dexter, or called Dexter, Georgia. We don't have a traffic light, and there's more cows than people. So that's definitely, I love the country life. I just graduated from Georgia Southwestern in December, majored in biology there. It's also a pretty small town in America, so I'm definitely passionate and love the rural atmosphere and love rural medicine. I shadowed a lot in neurosurgery and immuno um, immunology, as allergy, asthma, cardiothoracic, and I just liked the rural aspect. Whenever we would get away from the hospital and go out to the smaller town clinics, that was something I was very passionate about. In my spare time, I love volunteering with my church. I'm on the nursery rotation, so our church is growing a lot. So we went from having like 5 babies to 15. So nursery's no longer as relaxing as it once was, but I love, getting to volunteer and giving parents that break to, really just further their relationship with God. I have 2 dogs. They're about 150 pounds each, and they're my pride and joy. So that's usually what I'm doing when I'm not at work. I currently am an ophthalmic technician, so I work with optometrists and ophthalmologists in the clinic and in surgery. So anything from a basic, glasses, prescription contact evaluation to blepharoplasties, cataracts, LASIK surgery is all part of my day-to-day job.
Nice. Okay. Um, so I know you said you just graduated and you're a bio major and working in ophthalmology now. When did you decide you wanted to become a PA and what steps have you taken towards that?
So my first experience with a PA was not a good one. The PA missed a very crucial diagnosis. I struggled when I was younger with an eating disorder, and the PA told me to eat bacon for breakfast and just keep praying about it instead of admitting me to a hospital. I had a fight, I was given about 2 weeks to live because of that misdiagnosis. I kept going and spiraling. So that was in my hometown. I had to drive 3 hours to go to the hospital to get admitted. So that was really an eye opening experience. And once I got to the other side of that, I realized that I never wanted someone to go through what I went through. Just the lack of knowledge and awareness for different mental disorders and the dismissive nature of it. And so I was like, who was that? How did they miss that? So I started going back and I was like, oh, well, what is a PA? And I was like, there's no way that should have been missed. So my goal was to not only become that, but be something better than I experienced and make sure that no one else has to go through what I went through. And that was how I was first introduced to the profession. And throughout college, I kind of toyed with the idea. I was like, I kind of like it. Let me shadow. So I reached out and I fell in love with it, with shadowing. I love the collaborative nature of being a PA. I like how it's team based healthcare, but there's also some autonomy there as well. And depending on the specialties, there's a lot more autonomy in allergy and asthma than there is in neurosurgery. So just seeing how the roles are so diverse is also something I fell in love with.
Okay, did you consider any other careers in medicine?
Yes, when I first graduated high school, I was accepted into a BSM program. I knew that was never the goal for me, was to be a nurse. It was kind of when I graduated high school, I graduated in 2021 and I had already graduated with my associate's degree. And the world was kind of going a little crazy in 2021. Everything was still shut down from COVID. And my mom was like, there's nothing you can do with a biology degree. You don't know if there's anything if you can even go to PA school, with all of the COVID that's going on. So why don't you just stay home for a few years? And since I had already finished my core, the only thing that I really could do was nursing. I was like, yeah. I did 2 semesters. I was like, this is not the model that I want to be. And so I transitioned back into my original plan for biology and PA.
Okay, you mentioned that you didn't like the model. What differences do you see in the nursing versus the medical model that PAs are trained on?
So the nursing model I felt like was more symptomatic based. How can you alleviate the symptoms? And I feel like the medical model really gets to the root of the cause. Like I feel like the nursing model is more you can have an ibuprofen for the foot pain, but the medical model is why you have that foot pain. It might be plantar fasciitis, and so we can get to the PT and the exercises, and that's really I wanted to be part of the solution, not just band-aiding.
Um, Tell me about a time where you had to make a drastic change in your schedule.
When I was in college, oh, I was in high school and college doing dual enrollment, and that was my first semester in doing dual enrollment when COVID happened. So I went from having online classes in high school or in person classes in college to having online classes in college and not having anything in high school, but still having to take AP exams and, the state mandated testing. So I went from, 8 to 3 to a completely open schedule minus a few college classes. And so my whole schedule was turned upside down. And that was really hard for me. I'm a rigid person. I like a schedule. And that was the first time I feel like my world schedule wise was right upside down. And I definitely grew from it. It was a hard few months there at the beginning, just because of the rural area where I'm at, there's not much access to internet. So trying to take an online class without internet is not for the faint of heart. So, but that's definitely I would say one of the most major times my schedule has changed.
I know you mentioned enjoying and kind of being drawn to the rural areas where you're from. How did you feel about going to school in a bigger city? Why did you choose to apply here?
I definitely like the exposure of a larger city. There's definitely more resources, and I'll be able to see more medically complex cases. Where I'm from, everything gets flown out to another bigger city or to Emory or to Augusta. Nothing major is treated where I'm at. So I always want to be able to know what to treat and how to treat, and the best way to learn that is for me is personally by watching it and helping, and that's why I would want to go to a bigger university just to get that exposure.
If you had to choose a life motto, what would your motto be?
My life motto would be let go and let God. I'm very spiritual, and a lot of times I struggle with control, and especially applying to PA school, I've learned that I am not in charge, and just trying to realize that in the end it's up to God, and I'm really big in my faith, and so learning to trust him is kind of my life motto. He's got me this far, so um, but yeah, that would be my life motto, is just to let go and let God.
How do you handle stress?
I handle stress a lot better than I used to. I would say I tend to be stressed, but I have gotten into exercise again. Pickleball is something I have gotten into along with everybody else. I'm very competitive, so I always like to win, but that's a great way for me. I also twirl batons. I was a majorette in high school, so in college I had them, and I would just go to the gym and just twirl a few batons. It's hard to think about anything whenever you are juggling stuff, so that was something that definitely kept my mind out of it. Um, I also like to walk, just walk my dogs. 300 pounds of dog is a lot to walk, but that's how I've handled stress. Instead of, I used to box myself and freak out, but I would say about mid college, I was like, this is not the way to go. I can't keep thriving like this. And so I started going outside and touching grass and going and walking the dogs. I didn't have them in college, but playing pickleball or going on a walk or twirling batons. And that's really been helpful for me to find a healthy avenue.
Okay, and then where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I hope to be a practicing PA. I would love to be in a rural setting, just bridging the gap that I have seen personally in healthcare. I would want to be a provider that listens and takes the time throughout, my experience working with, in my practice, there's 5 different providers. They're just seeing how each one takes, scheduling or everything. I want to make sure that I have enough time for my patients and respect their time as well. And so, like, proper scheduling is going to be like a big thing for me. I'm always like, I want to be on time, but I want to respect everybody else's time as well. So just knowing from observing other practices and other providers, I would want to be a provider that, takes time and listens. Even a lot of patients, especially in the elderly population, I've noticed they just need somebody to talk to. And if I can be that person for them that they, maybe like going to the doctor now because they have someone to talk to, that's who I want to be. I basically want to be a shining light in my community, and kind of help be the person that I needed when I was younger.
Okay, let's stop there. How are you feeling?
I'm nervous, but
You're getting good feedback. I'm looking at it now. So being personable, yeah, I agree. Being great, being personable, being phenomenal. Oh wow. Now we're making real clappy. I don't know how you did that, but good job. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. I agree. I think you did great. I could tell that you got more comfortable as we went along, which is normal completely. Um, and expected. Oh wow. Oh wow. There's a lot more. Okay, so let's go through each one. Was there anything that tripped you up or you felt unsure of? Or you probably don't, or you don't remember.
Yeah, I'm kind of like I'm like, did I answer everything correctly? Like, it's like kind of like just blacked out now. But
I'm gonna say I
I feel
think
like I rambled a lot.
I didn't feel the rambling. That's interesting that you say that because I feel like a lot of people say that when we get done. They're like, I rambled, I rambled. And I, as the person watching, I'm interested to see what others think. I didn't feel that. It felt like others seemed very genuine. I felt like it's just kind of more of a conversation, which is ideal. Sometimes it's like that, sometimes it's not. But no, I wouldn't necessarily say, yeah, I didn't feel the rambling. So I wouldn't try to change that or make that any different. Okay, so yeah, I feel like I didn't think you rambled. There's a little bit of delay when we talk. So okay, yeah, we'll see what others say. But no, I didn't feel that at all, and I felt like your answer length was appropriate. Nothing felt too long or really even too short. So somebody said you were confident in ending your responses, and that can be something difficult that I see people not really do that well is just like stopping because when you stop, we're going to ask another question, and that's totally fine to do. So maybe watch it back and see if you still feel like you were rambling whenever it's posted. But I don't think, thorough, not dragged out. I agree. All right, let's go back to the beginning. Tell me about yourself. I mean, I think you gave a lot of information here. It might could be polished up a little bit, but there's value in also just being yourself and talking. Um, Somebody else said like, how do we not sound rehearsed? How do we not sound robotic? And that's where I think it goes back to having talking points, but not necessarily having everything mapped out you wanted to say or a response typed out that you're trying to memorize. Like just kind of knowing, I want to talk about where I'm from. I want to talk about my community. I want to talk about my shadowing. I want to talk about just graduating. I want to talk about my dogs. I want to talk about my volunteer experience, which bless you because they keep asking me to do nursery and I keep saying no. I feel so bad, but I'm like, I can't do it, guys. Like, I can't even handle my one baby. I can't handle all these
I know
babies.
it's great. You don't have to plan a lesson. If you put on Veggie Tales, you're the coolest thing ever. It's yeah.
My 2-year-old also hates nursery. He just hates people. So he won't go, or if he goes, he just cries the whole time. So that's a current struggle in our church schedule. But you also talked about being your experience, being ophthalmic tech. I feel like you fit a lot in there, and I thought it was good. Like I don't think I would change anything, which I think also for y'all who are watching to notice is neither person, Christina nor Sydney, jumped into their YPA here. Sometimes that happens. I'll ask my like, tell me about yourself. Like, well, I want to be a PA because blah 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 blah. And that's not what we're asking here. We'll get there, but I need the context of who you are and what makes you you before we get into your YPA. So thank you guys for doing that correctly. All right. So we get into your YPA, and I'm gonna be honest, when I read this in a personal statement or see this in an interview and somebody's like, well, I had a bad experience with PA, I'm always like, oh, where's this gonna go? Where are we gonna end up? This might be bad. Because it's like in medicine, there's this thing about like not throwing somebody else under the bus, even if you don't agree with what they did or whatever. Um, but I feel like we were able to really turn that around into how it didn't, for a lot of people, if they have a bad medical experience, it just completely turns them off. Like they don't want anything to do with it. They don't trust doctors anymore. I can say this because this is my sister has not only the issue as a 32-year-old still and she gets blood drawn and obviously. So because she went through so much as a child, she didn't feel like medical providers were helping her. And so those experiences can really just shape someone and shape what they want to do. And I feel like, um, but I really liked how you're able to kind of shift, and I really appreciate how you were vulnerable and honest enough to share your personal experience. Like that's not easy, but as someone interviewing you and trying to get to know you, it's appreciated, and I think it gives me more insight into how that's going to affect your patient care. I feel like personal thing we've gone through, either medical or not, helps us have more perspective on the patients that we take care of. Kind of like you mentioned, we have the opportunity to impact so many people. I see when I'm in clinic, like tomorrow, I think I have 41 people on my schedule. And I have the power to try to make their day better and try to serve them. That doesn't mean I always make everyone completely happy or that I can fix their problem the way that they want it fixed. But just going in with that perspective of I'm going to try my best, I'm going to give it everything I have, and really try to listen to that person. I feel like you're, like others were saying, like you're very genuine in that. And in this question specifically, you were able to incorporate talking about the collaborative aspect of being part of a team, as well as I really liked how you brought up your shadowing opportunities and talked about the difference in the level of autonomy. That is so much more impactful than just saying, PAs can be autonomous or PAs can switch specialties. No, you were saying, I like that show Don't Tell. I saw PAs in these different areas and saw how the autonomy level was different. And so there's just a lot of value there. So I appreciate that as well. Okay, we talked about other careers, and we got in, and this kind of gets into that nursing versus medical model. You may not necessarily be asked this or asked like nursing versus PA or nursing versus doctor, medicine, whatever, but be ready for it in case you are. You have, and you can unmute it anytime if you want to, and I'll turn mine off. You have very specific perspective on this as well because you were in a nursing program. And so you really can say, like, I was being taught this way, and I really want, and I liked how you explained it, like symptoms versus the root cause, or I would just probably say like diagnosing. And so I think, if you can incorporate that even into other parts of your interview, I would try to do that. I specifically asked that to try to get you to bring it up. But I think that is a probably big part of your story that may not completely be clear just looking at your application and transcripts and stuff. And so being able to expand on it would be helpful. What did someone say?
Yeah, in nursing school, I just felt like the answer to everything was call the provider, and I was like, I kind of want to be that. Like, I want to be the one to help, not just notice things, but, and that was definitely. I remember coming like back one day from clinical. I was like, yeah, I want to be a PA. Like, that's definitely, I definitely want that. So I was glad I got to experience a lot of different clinical, IVs, Foley caths. I got to do all of the things that way, but I definitely liked it to know what I want to be.
And that makes sense. And that, I think, going back to what we were talking about with Christina too, showing limitations is very helpful. So being able to show why you feel limited in a certain role, what you're not able to do that being a PA will fulfill or let you do. That's really, it gives that connection that we're looking for, that personal connection to why you want to do this. Like, why you want to commit all this time, all this money, all this effort, probably some tears to do this. Like, it's a lot. It's a big commitment. And so really being able to confidently show that is helpful. Okay, we talked about the drastic change in schedule, which this was a good opportunity to bring up your experience with COVID. And so let's see. So somebody said, oh, I brought up a good point about nurse practitioners can diagnose patients too. Yeah, but I think the difference is as a nurse practitioner, you still have to go down the nursing model. Like you still have to get your BSN first. And so it is still a little different. And even the nurse practitioner model, if you look up most programs, they are more writing based than test based. And so just the way you're taught, the way you're tested on the information is different. And so and kind of that's where the difference once we get to that point comes in. But yeah, I think researching them and kind of continuing to learn about differences is important. And if you've worked with an NP, you could bring that up some because yeah, out in the real world, when someone's finished NP school, they do look very similar to PAs, especially where we're at in Georgia. PAs and NPs are the same. It's just how you get there that's a little bit different. Okay, going back to drastic schedule, talking about COVID, switching from in-person to online. You've done a really good job of incorporating how you were doing dual enrollment and got your associates while you're in high school, which is crazy and very impressive. Like they didn't even offer that when I was in school. So I just think that's like the coolest thing that you guys can do. And then talked about lighting schedules and, you know, how access was hard, that kind of stuff. The next steps I would try to think about with this or take with this would be how are you going to adjust if you're in PA school and the same thing happens again? Like, are you going to be okay? Can you handle it? You know, are you going to, you know, you feel like you're good with that? So I would just make sure that with any of these types of questions, tell me about this, you're showing confidence that whatever the issue is, the conflict, the stress, the change in schedule, it's not something that you feel like will affect your progress in PA school or your practice. So being able to say like, yeah, I know that hopefully this doesn't happen again, but if it does, I have that skill set now to learn online, to adjust, to pivot if needed. Does that make sense? Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, it does. It was rough, but yeah, like I guess like go like bring more into like what I could do if it happened again. That was one of the answers. I was like, "Ooh, I don't know."
No, I'm talking. Okay, I think you did good. Sorry, I was talking and it wasn't working. Okay, and then I asked you, how do you feel about going to a bigger city? Why did you apply here? And that's what I mean. I think anywhere, but especially if it's different from where you've been, you want to be able to explain that. The people in the chat loved this answer, and I did too. As far as like getting more exposure, learning about different patients, having more resources, kind of seeing that, and then being able to take that back. So I really liked that. I thought that again was a very personal, genuine answer. I think you could, like, this would be an opportunity to talk about like things the program offers that you like. You could talk about some things about the city, make it very clear that you are okay to move. Like, I realize I'm going to move for school. It's fine. I bring my dogs with me, whatever. Like, you know, show, you know, I'm okay with this. Like, I'm not going to get here and not be happy. I can come here and live here and be fine. Yeah. Okay. Because a lot of people get to PA school and they're not happy with where they're living. But it's really short. It's only 2 years. Okay. I asked you about your life motto. That was kind of an off the wall question. Sometimes schools will say like, what's your favorite, what's your song? What's your like movie tagline? Like, who knows what they're going to ask. And so that was one that just like gets you thinking on your feet. I actually don't even know what I would say. If you asked me, I like have nothing. It'd probably be a Taylor Swift quote or something. I don't know. But I really liked your answer. I thought it was very honest. And I like how you expanded on it and said, you know, I struggle with control. That's something I'm working on. You really like PA school applications process has shown me that. And being able to like almost incorporate your weaknesses in here, which I liked the way that you went about that. There's my keyboard. Sorry. Okay. How do you handle stress? You said better than before. So that's good. Got into exercise, pickleball. Like this again, like goes back to what people were saying, like very personable, just being completely honest, sharing about yourself, which I really liked. I think you could kind of going back to some others, like get into some examples and talk about PA school, like being able to say, I can continue all of this in PA school. Like I'll know that maybe for an hour a day, I need to get outside and walk. I need to continue these habits I've created that help me, feel better, feel less stressed. I'm going to be stressed. I'm recognizing that, but I can handle it because I have these coping mechanisms. And you can even share like a time that you did that. Maybe that was like, maybe if you haven't brought up the COVID stuff yet, you bring that up. You're like, during COVID, I was locked inside. I had to figure out like how to cope with the stress of going to an online school. And so I figured out if I got outside and if I walked, and I'm just spitballing here, but I was able to adjust and move forward with those new habits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Like, just bring it back into currently, like what I can do in now and in the future. Yeah.
Yes, and just thinking through like, why is this important? Why does it matter? Why are they asking me this? Why do they care if I know how to handle stress? And then going into where do you see yourself in 5 years? So this can be academic, this can be personal, this can be all kinds of stuff. So you gave me a little bit of both of those. So practicing PA back in a rural setting, bridging that gap, listening to patients, taking time. My one caveat to this one, or like thing to bring up, is there's kind of a fine line between things we wish were the case and also being realistic. And so I think they're like just toe that line a little bit, because I agree with you. I'm also kind of a stickler of like scheduling and how things run, but I also have to accept that there's so many moving parts that I can't control that as much as I would like to at times. And so it's and I think you can pull from your shadowing and your work experience and being able to say, I've learned a lot about how I would love for things to run, but I also understand that, I may not find that in my first job, but I'll be looking for a job that allows me to have a say in how my patients are scheduled and allows me to spend time with them. Just to make sure there's no kind of like, does she really understand how medicine works? Does she really like know that this is a challenge at times? And so just kind of thinking through some of those points can be helpful, just to make sure, like a lot of people are like, I want to, help everyone in my whole community. And it's like, we would love to do that, but like, that's not a realistic goal. So you want to make sure you're kind of sticking to those things that are realistic. Does that make sense?
Yes. Would it be appropriate to say like personal things? 'Cause I know like when I was reading your like interview guide, it was like questionable about like bringing up like getting married or having kids, and I was like, I don't know, like that would ideally I'd have to meet a husband first, but like would that be something to bring up, or like just maybe kind of gauge the room and see?
You make a great point. Read the room and see. I'm always a fan of being honest and just being yourself. And like, that just made me laugh. So I think being able to say like, I would love to be married with kids, but like, I'd have to find a husband first. Like that's funny to me. And like, it shows me to be like the kind of person you'll be with patients. So I think it's comfort level, read the room, see how it's going. But you could always, I think, on the flip side of that, like, it shows also like, hey, I like am ready to like, I can up and move. I'm okay. Like, I'm not tied to anybody. And so maybe that's a plus for them. You never know. So I think, to me, if you're being your real self at an interview and you're being genuine and you're sharing the things that are important to you, you want a school that values those things. So I know you mentioned your faith a lot in your interview. I also worked with a campus ministry when I was at UGA, and I had on my application, I talked about it in my interview as well and in my personal statement. And I get questions all the time, like, should I bring up working for a church or my religion or whatever, my faith? And then my thing is, if it's important to you and it's something that's part of your life, then yes, because you want to go to a school that values that. Same thing with having kids, having a family. If that's something that's part of your life and important to you, you want a school that also values that and is aware of that. So, if you're trying to feel like you have to hide things from a school, it may just not be a good fit. And you're probably going to be mad when you get there and they don't like those things. So yeah, so I think, read the room is important through the entire interview process, because you just never know who you'll be interviewing with. So good point. All right, that's all of our questions. Thank you so much. I feel like y'all are both ready. Like, keep practicing, of course, but I think y'all did great. And I really appreciate y'all being our first volunteers of the season.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you guys for attending. Y'all did awesome. This was a little bit indicative of what our mock interviews are like. They are an hour though, so a little bit more questions and then lots of feedback, and then we send you a written review afterwards. So if you need help, we'll send out the replay. It'll have links and everything, but happy to help and get y'all on the schedule for a mock interview, or if you need anything, you know where to find me. Reach out, email, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Try to help you guys out. Thanks, guys.